Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I think it's just a way to push the unhoused people out of the downtown east side.
A controversial plan by the mayor to pause all net new supportive housing in Vancouver draws a big crowd to City Hall.
Supportive housing is housing.
Our housing system systematically pushes people into homelessness, and this motion is part of that.
Plus, looking for clarity. Canadian businesses watch and wonder as the deadline for Donald Trump's tariffs becomes murky again.
Obviously, we can't ignore US's market, but we can definitely start exploring other markets.
And
why I followed this instruction, fear, get it over with.
a senior in Surrey shares a painful story of getting scammed so others can avoid it.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Vancouver City Council is set to debate and vote on a controversial motion from the mayor. Ken Sim is proposing that the city halt all net new supportive housing projects until other cities step up and build more. Our Janella Hamilton joins us with more on what people have to say. Janella?
Dan, 95 speakers signed up to address City Council. Each gets 3 minutes to share their opinions on Mayor Sim's motion. They are actually through all of the speakers now, and most of them have been strongly opposed to the plan.
I'm assuming here that the intent is to temporarily pause contributions of land and money until other levels of government step up and contribute what they're supposed to contribute. If this is the case, I can absolutely assure you that this plan won't work. People are going to die from this.
This motion, when combined with the uplifting the downtown east side motion, leaked memos in the Globe and Mail, and the city wanting to get into the market rental game, reveals to me that this is really just a real estate grab.
When the building I was in wasn't supportive housing, it just had a slumlord. It was so dangerous there that I almost got shot going to the washroom. Supportive housing is housing, sir.
Now, outside City Hall, dozens of members of the Vancouver area network of drug users have been voicing their anger over the plan. Ken Sim first introduced this plan last month at a public safety forum. He says despite being only 25% of the region's population, Vancouver is home to over 77% of its supportive housing and more than 67% of its shelter spaces. He's calling for other cities to start building more supportive housing and allow Vancouver to renew its aging housing stock. Sim says as an updated plan for the downtown east side would encourage a mix of housing, stores, and services.
Janella, is there any support for the mayor's plan?
Yes, several groups from Vancouver's Chinatown neighborhood have written this letter of support. It says Chinatown has long felt the impact of rampant growth of low-barrier supportive housing in the downtown east side and in Chinatown. The small businesses and cultural institutions that define Chinatown continue to struggle under these conditions. Family-run shops that have existed for generations are being forced to close as crime, open drug use, street disorder continue to drive customers and threaten livelihoods. Earlier this month, Vancouver city staff found that 3,900 more supportive housing units are needed across the region to house people without homes. Dan, council is still debating the motion, so no word yet on what way that vote will go.
Janella Hamilton reporting for us. Thanks very much. Last month, Donald Trump threatened devastating tariffs against Canada, then paused them at the 11th hour. This week, there has been more back and forth with the president suggesting another extension. Trump's timeline may be changing, but the unease for Canadian businesses remains. As Dan Burritt explains, they're looking for protections.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly.
That was Monday. Now?
When does it go into effect?
April 2nd.
April 2nd for Canada, Mexico.
Correct.
Trump's tariff threats are seemingly changing minute by minute. But at a Surrey cardboard plant with $60 million a year in U.S. business in jeopardy, there's a sense of, here we go again.
The feelings right now, I would say, are everyone looking for silver lining. because we do understand that most of these are gestures. Regardless of whether they become reality or not, we have to treat it as if they are real.
But there is uncertainty from businesses. The Surrey Board of Trade says governments need to act to prevent the worst damage. They're calling for tax relief, fewer interprovincial trade barriers, and a registry of Canadian suppliers. Premier David Eby called those ideas appropriate.
The uncertainty, the impact on local businesses is significant, local communities is significant. And so that's why we're working with many business associations through our tariff and economic task force.
Now, the province has said it is ready to reimpose retaliatory measures on the U.S. if these tariffs do come to pass. And Ottawa says it is ready to follow suit with $155 billion of economic retort at the ready. But despite all this, a business professor says the on-again, off-again uncertainty of the tariffs could cause damage.
You get into this sort of situation where businesses are waiting and seeing on how things are going to go, so they don't actually make investments in new employees and training.
At the factory, while they say they take Trump's threat seriously, there is also resolve.
What can we do into medium and long term to become actually self-reliant? Obviously, we can't ignore US's market, but we can definitely start exploring other markets.
A shift that may require outside-the-box thinking. Liam Britton, CBC News, Surrey.
Now, for more on this issue, let's turn again to Samuel Roscoe. He was just in Liam's story, a lecturer in supply chain and operations management at UBC Sauder School of Business. Samuel, first of all, there's been a lot of confusion surrounding these tariffs and their timing. How does this uncertainty impact businesses, whether it's planning or making decisions?
Yeah, great question. I think, businesses hate uncertainty, and it's very difficult for BC businesses, Canadian businesses, to deal with all of the changes that the Trump administration is making with tariffs. And I think your previous interview, when he talked about, we have to kind of go through this worst case scenario planning. And I think what a lot of businesses are having to do now is they have to sort of treat this threat as real and begin to kind of look at, well, what would the worst case be? And the worst case at the moment is a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. So for BC companies and Canadian companies that are shipping into the United States, they're really seriously beginning to think about, well, can I diversify my market outside of the United States? Are there other options in Europe, in Southeast Asia? Do I have other opportunities to look for suppliers as well outside of the United States? And I think the threat of the tariff is almost as bad as the tariff itself.
We heard from the Surrey Board of Trade calling on governments to act, be it tax relief or reduced trade barriers. What do you think? Is there a fastest way to provide certainty for businesses?
I mean, I think obviously tax relief would probably be the quickest, and that would be some relief to Canadian-based firms. The reduction of interprovincial trade barriers is a significant one, and I do think that could be something that the Canadian government at a provincial and federal level could really be pushing hard and fast at the moment to make sure that those barriers come down. I think the reality is, though, that is not, it could make up for maybe 3-4% of GDP growth in Canada. They've estimated if the provincial barriers come down, but we still are looking at, the US, we're exporting around 70% of all of our products to the United States. So it's not going to totally offset the sales into the US. And I think the reality is governments really need to be supporting businesses in terms of moving up the value chain, really helping BC businesses that are doing raw material extraction, processing, energy companies, timber companies, food processing companies, and to actually help them to make some more value-added products that can then be shipped overseas. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is really because these products are higher value, and then the cost of transportation to Southeast Asia can be offset by higher profit margins. Mm-hmm.
Samuel Roscoe, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
A senior in Surrey is sharing a painful story. She says scammers conned her out of tens of thousands of dollars, and she wants others to learn from her mistakes. As Pinky Wong explains, anti-fraud experts say more than 34,000 people in Canada fell victim to fraud last year.
Naomi Mitchell was checking her emails when something different popped up on her screen in the morning on January 30th. It was a warning saying that her bank account has been hacked, and she was told to call the number provided. She did. A scammer identified himself as a constable with the fraud department.
So he wanted me to get to a bank account by 9:30 and take out his 10,000, 20, 30, whatever they would give me. But from then on in, every step of the way, I had to keep in telephone contact with him.
The 84-year-old then withdrew $20,000 in 2 different branches and delivered the cash to someone who identified as an agent.
That account was money that I set aside for everyday expenses, plus I always worked to get it more than I would need, say, for your monthly expenses for emergency. And that's, I can't talk about this. That's what got me down.
She says she did not get a chance to call anyone else during that time.
I thought, how many times have we phoned each other back and forth? And it was 41 times. So he just kept me going and going and going to that point, which I did not even think anymore. Why I followed this instruction, fear, get it over with.
Mitchell told her neighbor about the incident after she failed to get more money out from the bank as it was closed. That's when the neighbor realized Mitchell likely fell victim to a phone scam and reported it to the police.
As it is an ongoing investigation, we are pursuing it aggressively and hopefully we'll have a good conclusion in the end.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre recorded more than 34,000 victims of fraud in 2024.
Oh my goodness.
Mitchell's Sons has since posted a fundraiser for his mom, which has raised more than $20,000.
Complete strangers, family, friends. I'll never lose my trust for people. I'll be more careful. But there are awesome people out there. Come on over here.
She says she is sharing her story so people can be more vigilant to incidents like these. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Surrey.
Mounties say 2 women have been rushed to hospital after they were hit by a pickup truck on Tuesday near North Road and Lougheed Highway on the Burnaby-Coquitlam border. The women were on the sidewalk when it looks like the truck drove onto the street before hitting a pole. Burnaby RCMP say they suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The driver remained on the scene. It's not exactly clear what caused the crash, but police say impairment is suspected. Last summer, 3 people were injured by a crack in a water slide at Bridal Falls Water Park east of Chilliwack. Now a report on what happened includes 3 safety recommendations for the province's entire water park industry. The report by Technical Safety BC describes how a fiberglass crack in a tube slide at the water park opened up, leaving 2 riders bleeding with serious cuts and a third with an injured ankle in just an hour. It recommends people not be allowed to use a slide when an issue is found, something that happened in this case.
If the water park is notified of a condition, whether it's hazardous or possibly unsafe, that they really do a proper assessment of that before they allow riders to enter or continue down the slide in any way.
The other recommendations involve staff training and inspections. Darius Madavi here with our look at the weather and another stormy map.
Yes, it really depends where you are. Here in the south, with this high pressure that's built in, is going to keep us pretty calm and dry, maybe a few showers breaking in. But up in the north, things are looking quite stormy. Still have a wind warning in place up on the north coast. That should come down soon. Here, things are fairly calm, maybe a little bit of showers on the west coast of the island. We may also see some rain happening up on the north island. The radar imagery doesn't show up there. But if you take a look at this, you can see that precipitation expected to come down. Some models calling for it to hit Vancouver, some not. Environment Canada is hedging their bets and saying maybe some showers at any time tomorrow. I'd say don't plan your day around it. Probably not going to see too much in the way of precipitation here or on the South Island.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Even more uncertainty about when President Donald Trump's tariffs will be enacted. Will that 30-day pause be extended? After the break, we dig into the timeline, conflicting messages, and how BC's Premier is responding.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox. Check out CBC News BC, your local streaming channel. It's a free ad-supported TV channel that's available 24/7, delivering breaking news, including weather updates, daily headlines, and sharing stories that matter to British Columbians. Stream your favorite CBC programs like The Early Edition, BC Today, and On the Coast. CBC News BC is available on Roku, LG, and Samsung smart devices.
A group of school kids joined Premier David Eby to mark Pink Shirt Day at the legislature.
I have a question for you. Have you ever seen someone be bullied before at school? Yeah?
I've been bullied.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, has anyone ever been bullied before?
If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time.
That's the Reynolds Secondary School Junior Choir singing Cyndi Lauper's hit, Time After Time. The Premier addressed students and parents in front of the legislature, as we said. Pink Shirt Day was started by two Nova Scotia teens almost 20 years ago after someone bullied a 9th grade student simply for wearing a pink shirt the first day of classes. And there is more uncertainty about when U.S. President Donald Trump may impose 25% tariffs on Canadian products after he hinted at yet another extension. The deadline was next Tuesday, March 4th, the same day the BC government is set to present its budget. Our provincial affairs reporter Katie DeRosa broke down the confusion earlier.
Today, President Donald Trump mentioned a new date, April 2nd, saying that could be a possible date when the tariffs will take effect. That caused confusion because moments later, his White House staff said, no, the deadline is still March 4th unless Donald Trump approves the plan that Canada and Mexico has come up with to deal with stopping drugs and migrants from flowing from both borders into the U.S. David Eby was asked about these conflicting dates, and here's what he said.
The uncertainty that the president is creating, I believe, is part of the overall strategy. This is actually a deliberate strategy that he has to weaken Canada, to reduce the likelihood that people will invest in our country.
So David Eby was meeting this morning with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and fellow premiers virtually to talk about Canada's plan amid these tariff threats. He said that the Prime Minister assured the premiers that Ottawa's plan to shore up the borders with boots on the ground, better technology is moving ahead, and those plans are being communicated to Donald Trump to try and assure him that Canada is working on the border. So, you know, I asked the Premier as well about the uncertainty with the Liberal leadership. He hopes that that's not a factor in terms of Donald Trump's bully tactics, but you know, he said that we need to get moving and make sure that Canada's plan is really fully communicated to the United States.
And Katie, meanwhile, BC Conservatives plan to present a non-confidence motion in the NDP government. What's the move there from John Rustad?
So this is the first potential non-confidence motion that the Conservatives have lobbed. John Rustad has said right from the day he was elected, he will do anything he can to try and unseat the NDP, which of course has a bare majority at 47 seats. They do have support from 2 BC Greens, however, so it's unlikely John Rustad's motion will succeed. But I think it's just a shot across the bow to try and destabilize the government, because if any of their MLAs are absent, then that reduces the majority they have. So we don't know if that non-confidence motion will happen today or tomorrow, but it's in relation to the throne speech. So we're looking for that in the next 24 hours, I would say.
All right. Katie DeRosa in Victoria, thanks very much. The city of Prince George has gone to court to try to shut down a homeless encampment. The city had hoped to clear the camp earlier, but in 2021, the court ruled it could remain until there was suitable indoor space available for people there. The city says since then it has built supportive and low-barrier housing to accommodate 44 remaining people. It adds it looks forward to demonstrating to the court the progress that's been made to shelter those who are unhoused. It now wants a court order to allow it to demolish what's left of the encampment. A look at the day that was in Victoria. Relatively good conditions for a game of golf. Mix of sun and cloud and highs hovering around 11 degrees. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast coming up.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
For the first time since 2021, Ipsos polling is reporting the federal Liberal Party is pulling ahead of the federal Conservatives in public support. The poll was conducted on behalf of Global News between February 21st and 24th from a sample of 1,000 Canadians over 18 years old. It shows that the Liberals are up 10 points while the Conservatives are down 5. This means if a federal election was held now, the Liberals would get 38% of decided voter support, while the Conservatives would get 36%. Over 80% of those surveyed say an immediate election is necessary, mainly to address President Trump's tariff threat. Now, Trump's threats against Canada's economy and sovereignty to continue to dominate the Liberal leadership race. The four candidates faced off in Montreal last night for the English language debate. It was the last chance for Liberal voters to see the candidates on stage together before they cast their ballots. Voting did open today and continues until March 9th. Rafi Boudjikanian has more on the contenders.
The big difference Tuesday night, everyone was debating in their first language, meaning there were no real flubs and a slightly sharper tone.
Rather than guaranteeing the rules-based order, the U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that.
In fact, a necessity, an imperative here for us to work with like-minded countries on the new security architecture. Yes, we have to step up for our contribution. How we protect our Arctic, which is under threat not just now from the Russians and the Chinese, but from potential U.S. incursions.
Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland both saying they want to hit 2% of GDP on the defense budget fairly soon. Freeland wanting to get there by 2027. Carney saying it might take up to 2030, but hoping to get there sooner. Affordability and housing costs were other big topics of discussion on Tuesday evening. Freeland and Carney both saying they want to cut the GST for first-time home buyers. Those two have really dominated the headlines about this race, but Tuesday was also a chance for former House Leader Karina Gould and Montreal businessman and former MP Frank Baylis to stake out their positions.
By tackling things like homelessness and housing affordability, actually make people's lives more affordable. That's the job of being a politician. It's putting the human face on policy.
And I'm going to bring fiscal discipline to Ottawa. And yes, we're going to have to stop running deficits. It has a direct impact on the value of our dollar, and that has a direct impact on affordability.
There were a few more attacks on Pierre Poilievre and his Conservative Party throughout the evening as well. Mark Carney pointing out he's already received his security clearance, something Poilievre says he will not do because it would restrict him from criticizing the government. Chrystia Freeland attacking the Conservatives, saying they are against affordable housing policies. The winner of this race will be soon leading the Liberals against the Conservatives in a general election. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Thousands of Canadians are falling behind on their mortgage payments as the steep cost of living strains household budgets. And as Nisha Patel explains, the trend is hitting some provinces harder than others.
Are you kidding me?
Struggling with steep mortgage payments on their Toronto home, Sonia Sharma and her husband put the house up for rent and moved to Montreal.
Everything became so expensive for us that we had to actually look for a better cost of living place.
But they're still on the hook for $2,000 a month and may soon face a tough choice.
All in all, we don't want to, but we may have to think of selling the house.
While they're managing to hold on to the property for now, other mortgage holders may not be as lucky. In Ontario, the mortgage delinquency rate has jumped 90% in the past year. That's where a homeowner hasn't made a payment for at least 3 months. It's also climbed about 40% in BC and Quebec.
Those high interest rates that we've had for quite some time, although they are starting to come down now, that's still creating some additional stress.
The Bank of Canada has cut the key interest rate to 3%. Still, for more than 1 million fixed-rate mortgages that are coming up for renewal this year, that's much higher than when the loans were first signed.
You already have this widening gap, and is that going to get worse?
Some mortgage agents are urging clients to shop around and evaluate options like stretching amortization.
This is a moment to review, not put our head in the sand, and
just plan, budget, know what's coming your way.
That's especially crucial as unemployment in Canada has been on the rise, and the risks of U.S. tariffs could weigh on the economy. Sharma says that keeps her up at night.
Now we have some people in our circle, we personally know them who are laid off. So it could be me tomorrow, it could be my husband, it could be anyone.
For now, she's cutting costs, preparing to face any uncertainties in the months ahead. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston is charting a path forward on free trade within Canada, tabling a bill aimed at reducing interprovincial trade walls. But will other provinces follow suit? Brett Ruskin has more on how industry leaders are reacting.
This new legislation is designed to eat away at those regulatory inconsistencies that exist right now between provinces, and it's designed to do it all in one fell swoop. So if the regulations in BC or Ontario or another province exist that are good enough for those provinces, they would be good enough for Nova Scotia, as long as those provinces also pass similar legislation so that there is free trade in both directions between Nova Scotia and other provinces. So this would drop down trade barriers and open up trade between provinces.
It will allow any goods made in other parts of Canada to be sold in Nova Scotia without further testing, without extra red tape, without any of the foolishness that's happened in the past. The same will be the case for people and service providers. Roofers, healthcare workers, teachers, other professionals and service providers who are in good standing.
This is being applauded, this is being encouraged by different business groups like the Canadian Federation for Independent Business, saying that they are looking forward to seeing more provinces sign on to this idea to pass similar legislation in those provinces to really get this idea of interprovincial free trade started. So this is really contingent on the trust existing between different provinces, trust that those regulations in another province will be good enough for your province. So we'll see if other provinces do sign on indeed in the future. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
To health news now. Rising measles cases in Canada have health officials urging anyone who is not vaccinated to get on with it. More than 90 cases have been confirmed this year. And as Jennifer Yoon reports, it's putting the country on pace for the highest numbers in years.
In this southwestern Ontario community, a measles vaccination campaign to convince those who are hesitant. At least 68 people in the area are sick with the highly contagious disease. Officials say most of those ill haven't been vaccinated. Surge in cases is linked to community settings like schools and grocery stores, but most are being traced back to two events: a wedding in New Brunswick and a conference in Quebec. Attendees who had contracted measles abroad infected several people. They in turn went home and infected others. That has led to outbreaks in Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba. Separately, there are two other cases in BC, residents returning home from Thailand.
You combine poor vaccination rate with a disease that is highly communicable, like measles. Really, no infection is as infectious.
The disease was declared eradicated in Canada in 1998, but so far this year, 95 people have gotten sick with measles. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases total.
This measles outbreak represents the largest number of measles cases that we've experienced in Ontario since measles was declared eliminated from Canada.
Now there are fears that the disease may re-emerge more permanently.
What I would like to see is that we stop these outbreaks in their tracks so that it doesn't become entrenched in the Canadian context.
There is no cure for measles. The only defense is vaccination. And with case numbers increasing globally and spring break around the corner, Dr. Tam is imploring Canadians to get that protection, especially before traveling. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Texas health officials say an unvaccinated child in that state has died from measles. In a statement, they say the school-aged child had been hospitalized last week. This is the first death from measles in the U.S. in a decade. An outbreak in rural West Texas began a month ago with at least 124 cases now reported in that state. New Mexico has also reported 9 cases. The majority of them have been among people who are unvaccinated, most under 18. Back to one of our top stories now. The Trump administration sowing confusion over its own tariff plans against Canada, among others. A 30-day pause is set to expire next Tuesday, March 4th. But now the president appears to be suggesting a further pause into April. Richard Madden has details from Washington.
The Trump administration is revealing a new target date for implementing those punishing tariffs on all Canadian imports, initially set for next week. Now, Trump had paused his 25% tariffs to give Canadians time to strengthen the northern border and stop the flow of fentanyl. And for the past month, Ottawa scrambled with new measures to bolster military spending, fortify the border, and the appointment of a fentanyl czar. On Monday, Trump said that pause would be lifted and his tariffs would be moving ahead as scheduled early next month. Then yesterday, the White House clarified, saying no, the president was referring to different tariffs. So now, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick gave a blueprint on what it would take for the Canadians to avoid the onset of this first round of tariffs.
Well, we have the fentanyl-related is a pause. If they can prove to the president they've done an excellent job, that's what they first do in 30 days. But then the overall is April 2nd.
So this means if the administration is satisfied by Canada's actions, those 25% tariffs would be delayed until April 2nd. But remember, Trump has threatened a whole stack of tariffs against Canada, and it's a bit confusing. So here are some dates to keep in mind. You've got the border and fentanyl tariffs set for March 4th, unless that changes. You have the steel and aluminum tariff set for March 12th. There's Trump's tariffs on all imported vehicles on April the 2nd. And there are separate tariffs on digital taxes, or digital services rather, and on copper, where Canada is one of the biggest suppliers of copper imports into the U.S. Now, we also have heard Trump revive his grievances against Canada, ripping into its defense spending and questioning why the U.S. needs to trade with Canada at all.
Tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States.
But slapping tariffs on lumber, cars, and possibly steel is complicated since those imports are theoretically protected under the modernized free trade agreement, USMCA or NAFTA 2.0, that Trump himself signed in his first term. So while the Commerce Secretary may have given signs he's willing to negotiate, the White House is signaling the Canada-U.S. relationship is quickly moving towards more uncertainty and tension. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
Donald Trump says he has worked out a deal allowing the U.S. access to mineral deposits in Ukraine. As Chris Brown reports, that country finds itself in a tough place, trying to seek out the support of a new American administration, expecting something in return for continued support as Ukraine fights a grinding 3-year-long war against Russia.
The ore being scooped out of this quarry in central Ukraine is what Donald Trump wants a piece of for the United States in exchange for arming Ukraine. Titanium, extremely strong, durable, and yet lightweight. This operation produces it for electronics and engineering components. The operations manager here, Dmytro Holik, says his country could be a world hub of titanium. Ukraine possesses approximately 20% of the world's titanium reserves, he said.
This titanium quarry contains just a fraction of the valuable minerals in the ground in Ukraine. Donald Trump, the U.S. administration, and increasingly many Ukrainians now believe that these natural riches could be part of a political deal to end the war with Russia.
It's a very big deal.
At first, Donald Trump pushed a deal that many Ukrainians felt was badly one-sided. But the framework agreement President Vladimir Zelensky says the U.S. has agreed to speaks instead of co-ownership. Ukraine's industry also faces big challenges, with uncertainty over the war at the top of the list, which has hurt outside investment. Our CBC News team also visited this quarry 200 kilometers south of Kyiv, which produces graphite used in automotive parts and pencils. It's been going since Soviet times and looks it, with outdated equipment that badly needs an upgrade. With investments, there'll be life. The enterprise will operate, says the chief here, Valery Harkovits, adding Zelensky acted correctly by not making the initial concessions.
Beryllium.
This geologist says if Trump is looking for a fast return on his New Deal, he'll be disappointed.
The very quickest way for a new project is from 3 to 5 years. It's when you will be willing to push very fast.
The wisdom of a minerals pact with Trump has been divisive in Ukraine. These veterans all lost limbs in the war. Some of their artificial ones are made out of compounds such as titanium. These two useless old men, Trump and Putin, are ruling the world, said Bogdan Kovbasyuk. I don't believe there's a reason to give the Americans any natural resources because I don't trust them. Chris Brown, CBC News, near Zhytomyr, Ukraine.
Thousands of people gathered in Israel for the funeral of a young mother and her 2 children killed in captivity in Gaza. The 2 young boys, Ariel and Kafir Bibas, and their mother Cherie, were kidnapped during the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023. Israel says they were murdered by the militant group after they were kidnapped. Hamas claims they were killed in an Israeli airstrike 15 months ago. The bodies of the hostages were handed over last week. The father of the boys was released during a hostages for prisoners exchange earlier this month. He'd been captured separately from his family. It's an historic first, and it happened, about 140 million miles from here. What we're learning about Mars's soil. Stick around. Just before we get to weather, we have some breaking news. Vancouver City Council has just passed a motion 6-3 from Mayor Ken Sim to pause all new net supportive housing projects in the city until other cities step up and build more. This prompted a lot of anger and almost 100 speakers at council. Again, councillors voting 6-3 in favor of that motion. We'll have an update for you at 11 o'clock tonight. Darius Madavi is here, returning with his BC-wide weather forecast. But you have to show us a cool cloud first?
Yes, a cool cloud. Thank you for entering it that way and not being skeptical. Yes, thank you to Lee Bannister for sending this in. His sister Wendy took it in Victoria. This is what's known as a hole punch cloud. And it's weird to call it that because it kind of refers to the lack of cloud here. This is altocumulus cloud around it. This happens in the middle when supercooled water droplets, which make up these clouds, either evaporate or condense very, very quickly. So either they evaporate or they become these really quickly becoming these ice crystals that fall down to Earth. And that often happens when an aircraft passes through the region. So it's not a very common sight. So again, thank you, Lee and Wendy, for sending this in. It's a very cool photo. Hole punch cloud, or cavum is the other name for it. Now, let's turn to the weather because there's other stuff happening besides cool clouds. Unfortunately, we've got some rain coming down through parts of the south coast, not likely to reach us here on the lower mainland or on the South Island. Some models have it, some don't. Environment Canada is saying, there's a chance throughout the day tomorrow that we will get some showers. I'm going to go with probably not. Don't plan your day around it. But that precipitation is heading down to some people on the south coast. And then the next system doesn't roll in until the weekend. In the northwest, though, things are looking quite a bit stormier. A lot of precipitation happening there, although the winds aren't quite as bad as they have been. And then we get a bit of a lull before the next system rolls in as we get closer to the weekend. Here are our temperatures over the next few... Here are our temperatures over the next few days. There we go. We've got nothing too exciting happening up in the far northeast. Temperatures are coming up a couple degrees here in the south and then staying pretty mild over the next few days. We've got some sunshine on the way from many parts of the province, especially here in the more southern parts of BC. Oh, although I skipped that by accident. Sorry about that. Pretty sunny, also in the north, then a bit stormy in the northwest. And here's our 5-day forecast. We've got some sun on the way in. Chance of showers tomorrow, but for the most part, not too shabby.
A lot going on that board, but that's okay. General trends we see. All right, let's stick with science. You have something else exciting to tell us. Scientists have released the first study looking into scooped soil samples from Mars, just east of here. So, you're here with more. What could these samples reveal?
Yes, this is the Perseverance rover, known affectionately by scientists as Percy, and it's been doing some great work trying to find out what exactly is happening on Mars, or more accurately, what has been happening over the last, few billion years. The rover was launched in 2020. It landed in 2021 in what's known as the Jezero crater. Jezero means lake in some Slavic languages, and that's exactly what we think it once was, a lake. This was the perfect place to put the rover down because it's trying to answer some very big questions. Questions like, was there once water on Mars? Could it have been habitable? What was the climate and tectonics like billions of years ago? Was there, what is the surface? Can we land on the surface? Can humans make it? Is it toxic to humans? What is it made of? Because actually, when we landed on Mars, on the moon for the first time, there were holes in the spacesuits after, because turns out the surface of the moon is a lot sharper than we expected. And when that hit the spacesuits, it caused some damage. So those things are really important to know. And the way that we're investigating that is using taking samples, taking cores from Percy. You can see some of those cores here. These are different samples taken, and again, they can answer some really important questions. And in fact, we've already found multiple lines of evidence for the fact that there was water on this part of Mars. We've also found evidence, or we found traces of phosphate in at least one of those samples. Phosphate is really exciting. This is one of the things I'm most excited about because it's sort of the backbone of all of our DNA and RNA. It's part of our cell membranes. It's essential for energy metabolism. It's really essential for all life on Earth, all life as we know it. So the fact that it's there is exciting. If we want to find actual evidence, actual traces of life having been there, though, not just the chance that it could have been, that's going to have to wait until the samples make it back here to Earth, when we can do some more robust analysis, and that'll be a little while. It's setting samples aside. Percy is setting samples aside for us to take, but it'll be about a decade, mid to late 2030s. That's the time frame we're looking at for bringing those back here.
Okay.
But lots of life left in this little guy.
No kidding, and amazing footage of it actually landing and then Incredible stuff. There's also big news from a Chinese rover, though.
Yes, that's right. The Zhurong rover, this one is also very exciting. It landed down on the shoreline, what we believe to have once been the shoreline of a potentially massive ocean that once existed on Mars 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. This is what that might have looked like. This graphic here, that giant, one second.
I mean, this is cool to look at.
That's all right. There was a really cool, there we go, there's the ocean. It used ground-penetrating radar to look beneath the surface. The surface of Mars doesn't change as much as Earth's, but it does change a bit. And so that really showed that this likely was a shoreline.
Amazing stuff. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The actress who gave us Harriet the Spy has died. More of the loss of Michelle Trachtenberg after this.
For Black communities in Regina, finding music spaces that reflect their heritage hasn't always been easy.
Now, though, local DJs say the Black music scene in the city is expanding. Jeffrey Tram has the story.
This space is known as The Lounge, a dance floor where music is a unifying force. Owner Alex Tange says this was always part of the vision. The club has been open since 2013.
We see a lot of different culture come to, celebrate their national holiday and the exchange their culture with a different cultural people.
Stephen Gale, known as DJ Foodie, moved to Regina 15 years ago from Kingston, Jamaica. He says that when he first arrived in Regina, he was mainly hearing top 40, house music, and country. But now, he says people are embracing what he calls black music, dance, and culture.
Some people might take it aback because I like, what are they doing, you know? and then some who are here who knows what's happening, they will be like cheering and whatnot, and then they will look and they will say, okay, this is cool, I can be down with that.
Kevin Rodney, better known as DJ Blends, was inspired by his father, who was a music promoter in Jamaica. He says DJs like himself and Foodie are trying to bring that excitement to Regina.
It's kind of something over the years that we built as like a whole team, you know, as everybody that works. So, you know, culture, we need it, man. I love it.
Sean Forsyth, also known as DJ Classy, says this place gives him a sense of community.
Once we get all together, it's a vibe, man. It's something you just have to be there. I can't even explain it. It's just, we get it, we understand, it's our, you know, it's our culture.
With a growing audience and increasing acceptance, Regina's DJs hope to continue to build up black spaces, one song at a time. Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
An actor recognized for appearing in hit shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl has died. Michelle Trachtenberg first rose to fame as a child star in Harriet the Spy, a hit movie from the 90s.
Police say Trachtenberg was found unresponsive in her New York City apartment. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. Police say her death is not being investigated as suspicious. Michelle Trachtenberg was 39.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.